Good morning, everyone. Very excited to see all of you. We'll get started in a minute. Before we get started, I want to see if the chat functionality is working for all of you. So in the chat, please let us know where you're joining in from and what would you like to learn today? What is that made you show up here and spend an hour with us? Hi, Nancy. Hello from Toronto. Great. Hi, Sarah. Excellent. Denise, welcome. Marie from South Carolina, welcome. Terry from Austin, welcome. So excited to see you here. Liz, hello from Seattle. I'm from Seattle too. Jessica from Oregon, fantastic. Very excited to have all of you today. It's going to be a full house. As we all say in Women in Cloud, you have a seat at the table. Please use your voice. Please use the chat to communicate with us. And really excited to have Tucker Stine here today with us to really talk about some really good content and make you all thought leaders. Okay, so with that one, Marissa, if you can share the screen, that would be fantastic, and we can get started. So the topic that we are going to discuss today is what your LinkedIn says about your career. So that's the topic, and it is a sizzle topic because you all want to know what exactly are we going to talk about. So that's exactly the point. So first is welcome to all of you. When we get started, I do always have a question for all of you here. So when it comes to elevating your presence on LinkedIn, what do you want to learn today? What exactly are you thinking? What do you want to learn? Go ahead and please share your thoughts on the chat. Let's take a moment. I love a message from Code Greek. Thank you. And you had a great session with CloudJobs and internship and roadmap. Thank you. I hope you found a job or you're in a very successful process of finding your cloud job. We usually don't move till you actually have a communication with us. So when it comes to elevating your presence on LinkedIn, what do you want to learn today? Go ahead and put it in the chat for me. So the first one is, Jessica, thank you so much. I want to learn what looks good. What might think it looks good, but do others? How can I tell? Yes, we will be answering that one. How to manage my profile? Absolutely, Marissa, that one also will be shared. How to optimize my LinkedIn account to stand out to the potential employers? Absolutely, that is exactly what we will talk today. Polishing LinkedIn so I can attract the right recruiters. How do I get noticed with my profile? How should my profile look compared to my resume? Beautiful question, exactly the topic we have created, and we are really, really excited. So let me give you a little stat about the LinkedIn. So that kind of gives you a very good idea why we are choosing LinkedIn over Twitter and Facebook and Insta and all the TikToks out there. The reason why is LinkedIn is really designed for the B2B engagement. If you're looking for jobs, if you're building a thought leadership in the industry, in the business, LinkedIn is the solution. So there are around 810 million members there, and over 12 million members are signaling their availability to work. That's a lot of people looking for work. There are 58 million companies on LinkedIn, probably the largest of any other social media platform. About 60% of the LinkedIn users are between 25 and 34 years old, and 49 million people use LinkedIn to search job each week, and 6 people are hired through LinkedIn every minute. And there are 77 job applications submitted every second on LinkedIn, and that 30% of companies' engagement on LinkedIn comes from employees, and 4 out of 5 people on LinkedIn drives business decisions. So that is the reason why we are doing this session, to really help you stand out on LinkedIn or in LinkedIn and making sure that you're very successful. So with that, what I also wanted to share is we as Women in Cloud, we are a community-led organization creating economic access for women, professionals and founders in the tech industry. So most of the people do come and say, okay, I am on LinkedIn, but how does Women in Cloud provide to elevate your brand or my brand on LinkedIn? So there are a few ways which I want to share with you. So as you're thinking about using LinkedIn, you also have these solutions available. So what we look at our community is everyone can contribute in the Women in Cloud community, but we can amplify the work on LinkedIn to really get to significant scale. So there are 5 strategic programs that are available for you. So as you're thinking about LinkedIn, but you're also looking at a community to amplify that work, so it will help you get on the top of the cream on LinkedIn. So we have Cloud Leader Circle, which is really for leaders to really showcase their leadership, and we amplify and do warm introductions with them, so you really become a thought leader. Empower Her Access campaign really focused on helping you tell your point of view, and we amplify, because sometimes you get tired talking about yourself, but when somebody talks about you and amplifies, it's pretty cool. So you can participate in the Empower Her Access campaign. We have the blog platform and the YouTube platform that reaches millions of people. We have signature events that you can speak at those events, and we have a monthly newsletter that goes to thousands and thousands of people, so you can contribute to that. So let me give you some examples, and I want you to be aware that these solutions are available for the Women in Cloud community, and if you need to leverage it, you have it. Next slide, please. So when you go into the Cloud Leader Circle, when a new advisor is added, it basically talks about the person and how they can support you. So when you are getting onto LinkedIn and when people are saying, how can they help? So this allows people to easily find, and then this reaches 65,000 people across the globe. And every month it's growing. So you want to be part of a leader circle if you want to be considered as a leader or a thought leader in that space. The second scenario or the second solution, these are our signature events that is coming. And that reaches over 100,000 people around the world. So we have the summit, which will kick off on 26th, and then it goes throughout the year. There are multiple signature events that are there. So if you are dying to speak on our stage, I would ask you to apply on our events, okay? The third one is the Empower Her Access campaign. This is a place that we actually would love each one of you to participate. This year, it reached over 1.5 million, one of the largest exposure campaign for women in the tech industry that is also made accessible for you. So every year we have a very prompted question, allows you to showcase as a role model in the tech industry. So all these solutions are available. Are you excited that you can take advantage of it? If yes, then put yes in the chat. We would love to hear from you. Okay, now I'm going to hand over the baton to Tucker. He's a very good friend of mine and the whole entire Women in Cloud. He's a founder of Tucker Stine Brand Architects. He's a brand architect, executive speaker, coach, leader, advisor, and also a women advisor board member. He has coached over 200 speakers on TEDx stage, brand strategist for global companies, including Microsoft, F5, Sam Adams, and Starwood Capital. A little bit story about Tucker. I met him 5 years ago, and I was on a journey to be a TED speaker. And it took me 10 years to get on that TED stage. But when I met with him, it took him 10 minutes to say, "You're ready." And that voice still is there. Whenever I am like trying to do something, I always remind that moment, and it says, "You're ready." So with that, I'm going to hand over the baton to Tucker, and he will make you ready on LinkedIn and also unlock your thought leadership persona in the world, because the world is waiting for you. With that, Tucker, I'm going to hand over the baton. And thank you all for being here today.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I really, really appreciate you being here today. This is one of those things that I love to talk about. So if I get a little bit excited, you'll understand why. I am here specifically today to help all of you rethink the way that you show up in your social. And the reason why we specifically picked LinkedIn is it really is the nice bridge and balance between your professional and personal brand. So go ahead, Marissa, let's go on to the next slide. And I want us to start off with a mindset shift. The way we look at our personal platform today is nothing like it was yesterday. I like to say that we're in this idea of a creator's world where we have at our fingertips the ability to create our own content, to connect with our own audiences, and literally develop our own moonshot ideas right from our own desktop. We didn't have that years ago. And even as social has evolved, it really has become an opportunity to build our own personal platforms. I want that LinkedIn platform for you today to feel like it's connected to you, it's representative of you, and that you feel 100% confident that you're going in the right direction to market yourself to the world. That's exactly what I want you to feel comfortable doing today. For some of you, this might be validation and reiteration that you're on the right track. For some of you, this may be brand new information. I never say this is not exact science, because social platforms and personal brand building is never going to be an exact science. But I have seen at least this direction, this strategy, and the way in which I coach my own clients, this seems to work the best. So I encourage you to think about these strategies, take them with you today. Look at and evaluate not just your LinkedIn profile, but how some of the messaging for yourself can then translate into your own social platforms. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one, Marissa. So one thing that you'll hear often, and it's become definitely something that's growing as we build our own personal platforms within social, especially on LinkedIn, is this idea of thought leadership. And thought leadership, if you've heard about it, it's evolved. And I would also like to say that I have a slightly different definition of what we see today. Traditional thought leadership, I'm just going to read this for you, an expression of ideas that demonstrates that you have an expertise in a particular field. Now, one thing that I think that this leaves out, and I think is definitely missing, is that right now, this definition of thought leadership is very self-centric. It's driven about you individually. What makes really strong thought leadership is not just about what you bring to the table, but how others experience what you bring to the table. So Marissa, let's move on to the next one. I'd like to argue that thought leadership should be defined slightly differently. It's an expression of the ideas that demonstrates you have a more passion than anyone else in a field where your ultimate goal is to create the greatest impact possible. So you can see we're shifting away from this, I am in the center of it all, into I have ideas that want to support and impact everyone that's around me. So we're moving away from the ego and into something that's a lot more informative around how I can help others. We're starting to see that the majority of people, and this is the transparency that is social media these days, the moment somebody says something about themselves, it speaks volumes to who they are. The moment that somebody starts to talk about themselves through the eyes of other individuals that they're helping and creating the impact, completely changes the definition of how you show up. So I encourage you today to look at how we've shifted away from look at me to look at we. And when LinkedIn first started, it was about digital translation of the old paper resumes. And that's really what it was about, was how do we get our resume in front of the most individuals in a digital deliverable. Well, not only have we done that, we've accelerated it. We need more than just that. So today we're going to look at how we move away from it just being a resume and it to really acting as your own personal brand platform. Okay, Marissa, let's go on. So I know a lot of people, you've seen this quote before. I always bring it up because it is so apropos to what we're discussing today. But Maya said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget the way you make them feel. Your challenge and your goal is to move into language and messaging on your LinkedIn profile that makes people feel you. If you said that 5 years ago, people are like, wow, LinkedIn, that's not a place to have feelings or emotions. That's what's going to set you apart, is when you start to learn the messaging and the language around how you make other people feel when they experience you. And those are some of the tactics we'll talk about today. Go ahead, Marissa. So what is our greatest tool for creating impact? Well, here's a quick little insight to the answer. It's free. And the only thing you have to do is activate it, because it's already inside yourself. Go ahead, Marissa. It's your voice. Simple. For a lot of people, social media gives us an opportunity to hide behind our voice. It sometimes can silence our voice. But what I'd like to encourage you today is allow this LinkedIn profile, this platform, to be the source of your voice. Allow that to be something different than you've ever looked at it before. It's where the industry is going. It's what's going to start to set you apart. And I think as we go through these strategies, you'll start to see why, and how you can simply make honestly, some simple fixes that hopefully will create huge impact for you. And I will say at the end of this, I'm going to leave 20 minutes or so for Q&A so that we can use the chat as interactive, so that I can answer specifics for you. But I want to get through the overarching strategy first. Go ahead, Marissa. So my favorite quote of all time, being that I'm in this space of helping speakers, develop their voice and find that voice and share their voice, I think this is one of the most powerful quotes ever said, and it's so timely, relevant to where we are today. Hafiz said it perfectly. The words you speak become the house you live in. Think about how your LinkedIn messages, the content that you put on there, what that speaks about you. Because whatever you put in there is exactly how people are going to perceive you. Whatever you put in there and you speak is exactly the place that you're going to evolve from. So if the words aren't in alignment, if the content is trying to meet others' expectations and not your own, it is completely going to fail you. I promise you, it will fail you. Now, sometimes we need that failure in order to understand where we need to go and where we don't want to be. But I promise you, start speaking the words and using the content that you would like to see for yourself, not living in the expectations of others. Because at the end of the day, if you're trying to put words and content out there that's in the eyes of the expectations of others, you're going to find yourself in a position that you don't like. You're going to be in that people pleasing, in that I don't have a voice, this is not an alignment, I don't have passion behind this, only because you sacrificed the opportunity for your own passion and well-being. So that's something to think about when you put together your LinkedIn profile. Next, Marissa. All right. What brings our voice to life is story. Now, a lot of people always say, well, Tucker, why do you want to bring story into the professional world? It's too personal. It doesn't belong there. Let me tell you this. Humans buy on emotion and justify with logic. So if we're only using logic to create connections, we're not going to get the purchase. We're not going to get the buy-in. So what we do is we focus on the emotional connection. And what does the power of story actually create in that emotional connection? Trust. Trust is the number one thing that we need in developing relationships and networks within LinkedIn. How many times have you gotten a LinkedIn request where clearly, because it says dear, and it's like your name spelled backwards, last name, first name, or the name of your company, right off the bat, it's not a genuine introduction, right? That's the kind of, there's no trust built there whatsoever. So what we're going to do today is really focus on what language you can use for yourselves to build that trust. Once you've built that trust, it changes the nature in which the game is being played. So think about that. I'm not saying, air your dirty laundry and going, you're looking for specific stories that connect with others, because when they connect within that space, they've already built the trust. All right, Marissa, let's keep going. So one thing I want you to think about, and we're about to dive into LinkedIn itself, and we'll make this available so that you have it. I call this specifically the 4 circles of purpose. And I think what we're all really good about doing is mastering one of these circles, but rarely do we actually look at all four of them in motion. And if you can use this diagram as your own exercise towards building what that center circle is, which is purpose, I think you'll find naturally the messaging that falls out from it will be a lot more in alignment and a lot stronger and a lot more connected if you follow this. So in developing your purpose, let's look at these four circles. Passion. You love it and you live it. This is where we start to see the blend of what you're doing personally and professionally are starting to blend together. This also, I will tell you, a lot of people I hear back when they do this, they realize they're in the wrong position. It's okay today if you say to yourself, okay, this was the permission that I needed to move on to something else. Or, oh, this was the validator that I needed to feel like I was in the right space. This is a very good tool to use to determine, are you in the right spot? Are you staying stuck? Are you moving forward? What does that look like for you? So let's move into mission. Your tribe needs it. The people you associate on a day-to-day basis, your tribe specifically needs what you have to offer. There's that demand gap. And then we're moving into calling. You are rewarded for doing what you love to do. So now you love it and live it. The people that you work with need it, and you get compensated for it. That's a pretty cool equation to have. And then moving into your career, you have the gifts to deliver it. So you love it, people need it, you get rewarded for it, and you have the expertise to deliver it. So think about how these four circles work in conjunction for you. Because in that purpose circle, that's where the core of the messaging needs to be as part of your personal and professional platform. And those are the kinds of things that we want to look at in determining the messaging on your LinkedIn profile. All right, next. All right, let's start to go into LinkedIn itself, specifically building your presence online. Like I said before, whatever we do today for LinkedIn, a lot of this can then translate into other social platforms. A lot of people develop short form content. They use it for TikTok, YouTube Shorts. They'll start to put memes together, start to build a library of content based off of their LinkedIn profile. Most people, you don't hear about it that way. But if you could actually create a space where your personal brand and your professional brand are starting to marry to one another, you'll start to see that the content that comes out of that offspring is going to be really, really great stuff for your other platforms. Next. All right. Anatomy of a LinkedIn profile. I want to get down to the basics, but also realize that sometimes little things on these basic things mean a lot. Okay. The anatomy of a LinkedIn profile starts with your profile photo at the top. Pretty straightforward. Usually, is it attached to a banner, a header across the top, which we will discuss. So we're going to work from the top down, right? So think about that top, just like any websites above the fold, that is your first impression. Your profile photo and that banner across the top is your first impression. Headline or title is what's right underneath your profile photo. Your about or your summary is that section now, which used to go right into work experience, now is the about, and we'll talk about that. Featured section allows you to actually put in highlighted posts, video content, whatever that is, and we'll get into that. So if people want specific things that you want to highlight about yourself, that's the featured section. Work experience, pretty straightforward. Now remember, LinkedIn was really developed for the work experience component of it. And now you're seeing all the other things that go with it that are helping you build your own platform. Skills, recommendations from others, your education, your schooling, and then volunteer activities. So we'll start to get into each of these. Now I'm going to apologize up front. I'm using part of my own profile because I want to be able to educate you the right way. There are lots of profiles out there that I love, but I want to be able to talk to mine specifically because I developed it for a reason, and I want to share that strategy because it's worked for me. And I don't want to go out there and give you a bunch of LinkedIn pages that, you know, don't necessarily connect. I want you to see exactly what I did specifically. So the first couple slides we're going to look at happen to be mine. I am not self-promoting. I'm simply using this as an opportunity to show you why. All right. So remember I told you about that top. That is your first impression. Profile photo, please get a professional headshot done. This does not mean you need to go into a studio and spend hundreds of dollars and whatever it is. I have a couple of profile photos that I've used. This is the one that my kids love, so I use this one. I will tell you right now, my daughter shot this with an iPhone. You do not need to go into a studio and do it. Just find ways to create some professional photographs. Most likely, there's someone in your network that does photography to a certain degree, or you have a teenager in the house that really knows how to use the camera. Find ways to do it. I promise you don't have to spend money on it. The second thing, that banner across the top is advertising for you. It is there for a reason. It's not there to make things look pretty. It is there specifically to help draw people in. And I can't tell you how many people just leave that as a skyline or a nature scene, or they leave it the blank, like LinkedIn graphic. This is a space for you to tell a story. It's that moment of engagement for you. This is your headline. So I switch mine out from time to time, but I use it as a headline, use it as content, something that's unique to you, something that inspires you. Yes, it could be an image, as long as the image tells some sort of a story or is revealing about you. This is your first opportunity. Okay. All right. Let's stay here. So underneath that, you're going to see what they call title or headline. Underneath this specifically, there's a couple things you can play here. This gives you an opportunity to, one, look at roles and titles, and two, look at language that describes who you are as a person. Now, one thing to think about here, you have a choice. And I'm going to support one more than the other, but you can use your LinkedIn profile to currently boost where you're at with a specific organization, or you can use your LinkedIn profile to boost who you are as an individual, as your own brand. More and more companies are seeing the power in building personal brands for their employees because it actually accelerates the talent, the visibility, and the brand for themselves. Mind you, if you only focus on your current role and your current title within an organization, what you're saying to the world is, I am bound to this company. This is what I do. I'm defined by this role. This is where I'm at. So I'm giving you that voice of permission to say, think a little bit differently. Yes, where you're at is important, but it's also, this is your story. This is your tool. This is your ability to build a platform. Think about what these roles and titles mean to you. Now, the other thing I'm going to say too, this title here, think of this as your own search engine. When people search titles or whatnot, you want to make sure that whatever you've done or do or passionate about in terms of the role that you play is in that section. I share and do a lot of different things. I want people to understand the breadth of what I do. So that's why I have multiple titles in there, because when people are searching CEO or CMO, it pops up. When they search TEDx, it pops up. Leadership, it pops up. Now, the other thing it also gives you an opportunity is, in a few words or less, can you define what you do and what you're passionate about? And at the end of the day, yes, I've been in the ad agency world, brand world, whatever it is. My passion is helping people turn their stories into brands. Bottom line. So now you get your search engine and you start to look for those keywords, key title words, but also people and brands. Think about your title and your headline as its own mini search engine. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to talk about this. And again, I know you're putting stuff in the chat, so we'll revisit when we get to the end. And yes, Rebecca, that's definitely when you're trying to transition to careers. Here's the thing. Think about your headline being where you want to be, not always necessarily where you are at. If you think about more aspirational language and manifestation of where you want to be, that's okay. That's going to help you with the transition. Because at the end of the day, if you're transitioning into something different, you want to attract new people. You're not going to attract new people if you have your old language there. So start talking about how we can support the new language. And for you, I'm going to go ahead and answer these as they're coming up. Students, this is your greatest opportunity to tell a story. I'm going through it right now with my 17-year-old son who's applying to college. Those essays, how do you make yourself stand out? Same kind of a thing. What is one unique defining thing about you that you want to lead with, which actually, Marissa, let's go into the next slide. It works out perfectly. The About section now that's in the LinkedIn, it used to not be there. We would go right into work experience. My task and charge to you is don't make it about work experience. And I apologize up front. There's some landscapers outside. So if there's a little bit of background noise, that's what it is, but I'm going to power through this. This is an opportunity for the power of voice and the power of story to rise. So students, this is where it is right here, if you don't have a lot of experience, okay? I always say start with a statement. What is one statement that defines who you are as an individual? Who you like to help, what's the solution that you're offering, and how are you going to do it? Think about what that story might look like, or that statement for you might look like here. It does not have to be the role that you're in today, but what you as an individual show up, what does it mean to you? Then I put in that next section is, what's a defining moment for me? What do I find? I want someone to be able to see what do I value in my own life? What's one big lesson that I've learned 25 years in my professional space? What does that lesson look like? So I chose specifically this in particular one, and it's a vulnerable one. That my own story, my comeback, is my greatest give back. There's that emotional connection. I can relate to that. Okay, building trust. Then I go into how I've done that, what my core strengths are, which is around branding and communications, and then some specific highlights or accomplishments. And then I end with, here are 5 to 7 categories of things that I work in specifically. The goal is, if somebody looks at your About section, they don't want to see your work experience there. They're going to look right down below for work experience. This is your opportunity to really focus on the storytelling. You may have 1,000 different stories. You may have to test them. You may have to work through some of them. But think about a story specifically that informs people who you are as an individual, that can relate both personally and professionally. You don't have to go into great depth, but think about this as more of, here I am versus here's what I've done. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. So we've talked about the profile photo, the headline, the title, the about or the summary. And I'm sure we can answer some questions on the about or summary at the end of this. The next is featured. So Marissa, let's go to the next slide. This is a fairly new within the last couple of years that they've added, where it's underneath the about section. This is kind of a cool spot for you to exercise some highlights specifically of you that's more driven by an experience and not just by watching or by reading something. So this idea of an article that you've written, a blog, something that you've published could go here. A video showing what you do in action, something that inspires you. You may be in the video, it may be somebody else, but what's content that's relative to you that showcases who you are as a person. Testimonials. This is a great, even though you've got recommendations down below, video testimonials and allowing other people you've worked with to tell your story is very powerful. These are just 3 kinds of things that you can put in the feature section. It used to only be 5 things. I think they've now added more features that you can put in there. But allow this to be kind of a smattering of things that represent who you are. This could be sharing other people's content and you're commenting on it, but it also shows the dialogue between you and somebody else. But think about this featured section. Now, you have to activate it for it to be live. A lot of people forget that it's there. This is a great spot for you to market yourself and show who what you like. Maybe it's a TEDx talk that you enjoy. Maybe it's your own TEDx talk for that matter, or a place where you've given a lecture or a talk, a keynote, whatever that looks like. Students, this is a fantastic opportunity to showcase any interactive digital project that you might have done your senior year or a master's program, whatever that looks like. Don't be afraid to show what you've learned in the last 4 years. I'm going to be the first one to say, I don't know what you've learned the last 4 years, and you don't know what I've learned 30 years ago in college. You're teachers at this point. You're moving from students into teachers. Use that section as a place to teach. It's okay to do that. Teaching is experience, and people catch on that. All right, let's go to the next one. So we've talked about that featured section. Now let's talk about the work experience. Go ahead, Marissa. I want to make this as simple as possible. It's very easy to go on and on and on because we feel like we have to show how much we've done for a particular job. Bottom line, people don't want to see that. The more you put in there, sometimes it's almost a distraction, or sometimes it feels, when job recruiters are looking at, it's an overcompensator is what I call it. Look at your title. What was the specific role that you had? You don't have to pick one that's in LinkedIn. Make it your own title. And if you need to make it creative, make it creative. 3 to 5 bullet points of what you did. That's it. 3 to 5 bullet points. And then maybe a couple of success points of what you took away from it. Something that you learned, something you accomplished, a success, whatever that looks like. Keep those 3 things in mind: title, experience, success. Anything outside of that, don't put it in there. It's too much, right? Everyone's attention span is short. This is a quick billboard for each of those work experiences. Think of it as a billboard, not as a dissertation. The other thing I will say too, you can put at the bottom of each experience, maybe it's the website, a project that you worked on, a video, a podcast, whatever that is. Feel free to put those as media underneath them. Okay, keep it simple. All right, next. Where are we at on time? Okay, a few more minutes. I want to be able to open it up to questions. The rest, I'm going to leave these as green check marks. I'm going to go through them individually. Skills. A couple of years ago, LinkedIn added this little thing where you can basically select from like 100 different skills where your expertise is, right? So you can pick a bunch of skills that you specifically can own. If you're in the sales and marketing space, it could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be product development, it could be lead generation, conversion. There's a bunch of different skills around that. Select the ones that most match you. Not the ones that people are looking for, but the skills that match who you are as an individual, so that recruiters are matching you directly to an opportunity. The other thing that's not on here, and I will put in there, is endorsements. You'll start to see other people see a skill in you, and they will endorse you for that skill. So the skills and endorsements are somewhat related. Recommendations. I will say I'm the first one that is horrible at this. There it is. I raised my hand. I'm horrible at it. It's hard for people. This is very different than what it is from everybody else. You have to ask the person for the recommendation. You can't just put in a testimonial and say, well, this person said this. It's hard because somebody actually go in their LinkedIn profile and endorse you through LinkedIn. The ask is the hardest part. Find 5 people that know you, that champion you, that come from different disciplines. One could be personal, one could be educational, one could be professional, one could be a coach, an executive trainer, whatever. Find 5 people with different skill sets and ask them and say, what is your experience with me? I'd like to be able to share that with the world. People, don't fear rejection. Don't fear the rejection. People want to help people. And let me say this, if they say no, put that red flag up there. They're not the champion that you thought they were. Find 5 people that are willing to champion you. That's all you need is 5. You can continue to ask for more, but put 5 in there just to get you started. It's a great way to find out who your friends are. Not that I'm saying from experience, but it's a great way to vet those so-called friends and colleagues that you think have your back. The next is education. Don't be shy. Put it in there. Every single, for the most part, whether it's high school, if you're outside the United States, university, colleges, whatever it is, most of them have a LinkedIn page. Make sure that when you put in your education, and for this matter, your work experience, you use the professional business page that institution or company has put into LinkedIn. The reason being is now you're tied directly to their network and searchability. Otherwise, if you just put the name of the company and you don't select their actual LinkedIn page, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to make connections. Same thing with education. Alumni is so big right now. With the market the way that it is, people changing, one of the first places people go, they go back to their alumni. I'm in transition. I lost my job. Hey, I noticed we went to the same school, looking to do this. Do you know anybody? Education is really important. Do not feel that this is a comparison. My school better than that school. If it's not Harvard, it doesn't belong in there. Bull, put it on there. Your network, your alumni network is so powerful, even if it's just high school. Use that education. It's a powerful tool. And then finally, volunteer and activities. Show people who you are by what you do. It's unfortunate that it's at the very bottom of the LinkedIn profile. I actually look at that sometimes first after I look at the about section. It's very telling of who you are outside of the office. Is it youth? Is it your church? Is it sustainability? Whatever that might look like. What are the things outside of who you are as a person speaks volumes. Sometimes even more. If it comes down to someone with similar skill sets, and I've had this happen before in some of my leadership training, they base it off of volunteer. Or sometimes recommendations, but volunteer. What are they doing outside of the office that defines who they are? It's one of those sections that people don't care. No, they care a lot. And you also find out a lot about a person when it comes to interviewing. Look at, let's say someone's interviewing, look at where they volunteer, see if there's a connection. Pets, there's always a connection with pets. You'd be surprised how many people support Humane Society or some sort of animal cause or whatever it is, something to do with disease, MS, autoimmune. You start to see a lot of people connecting over those kinds of causes. This happened last week. 2 cancer survivors, 2 breast cancer survivors connected because of that, and now they work together. Nothing to do with what they did in their former job, where their education was, because they understood each other and they knew what they'd been through already. This is where the power of personal platform outweighs knowledge. Passion outsmarts knowledge. Purpose outsmarts knowledge. Knowledge is achievable. Passion and purpose, they're learned. They're innate. They're part of your DNA. So don't avoid them. Don't ignore them. With that, Marissa, let's go on to the next slide. Chaitra, do you want to come back in with me and we can talk Q&A?
I believe Chaitra might have had an emergency call pop up.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. That's totally fine. What I'd like to do then is open up the chat. And Marissa, if you wouldn't mind, kind of maybe start asking some of the questions in the chat, since I'm not up to speed. Yeah,
of course. So 2 of the big ones that popped up while you were talking, we had one person asking kind of how to delineate when your volunteer and work experience overlaps, and how to not date your experience when you have to add dates to things if it is older experience.
Okay. Definitely 2 different things.
Doozy of a question, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's 2 different things there, and that's fine. When there's a crossover between volunteer and work, put them in both places, right? So if it is considered a work experience, even if it's unpaid, if it's an students, internships, please internships. Even if it's an unpaid position or whatever that might look like, put them in both places. There's nothing wrong with doing that, because it serves both. So hopefully that answers that part. Timing. The old days of looking at a printed resume where it's almost like people are like, oh, wait, there's a gap here, or, how far back do I go, and that sort of thing. It's less of a situation than it was, years ago. If there's a gap, so be it. There's a gap. There's going to be a lot of gaps for people over the last 5 years because of COVID, and that's fine. People are not not second guessing the gap. That kind of societal tradition of you're always working doesn't have to play a part of it. And if there's a really good story as to why you didn't work those couple of years, let it be a part of it. You know, maybe that's part of the messaging that should go in there. I always say go back no more than 5 positions. For those of you that are, you know, in your 40s and 50s and beyond, I wouldn't go back more than 5 positions. Now, again, that's based on timing. I don't think you need to go back more than 10 years, 15 tops, except if that relevant experience makes a lot of sense. Some people have been at the same company for 15, 20 years. That's fine too. But no more than 5 experiences, because here's the other thing too. If you go more than 5, people are going to think you jump around a lot. So focus on 5. And sometimes they're not necessarily chronological back to back. Pick 5 that are best representation of you. That's okay. But I don't think you need to go back more than 10 or 15 years and don't need to go back more than 5 positions. Hopefully that answers that question. If they ask, you can, you know, in an interview, so be it.
I think another good question that popped up while you were presenting is we had someone ask, how do you choose your story, the story to tell in the about section, and how do you not just focus on your career?
Mm-hmm. I think this is, and the reason why I brought in those the four circles of purpose, revisit that first. I think that'll help you determine what kinds of stories belong there, or at least what kinds of stories to narrow it down to. I always say that if you can marry a personal story with a professional lesson, that's the best way to do it. Because most often or not, a story that has as much power as it has, that affected you in some certain way, that was a pivotal change in your life, is going to have some sort of connection to a professional lesson. Guaranteed. And if there isn't a lesson that can be derived out of the story, it doesn't belong. You can go ahead and toss it aside. But I would find one specifically that either highlights you the best or the role that you want to be a part of the best. But more often or not, it's a story in your life that's had the most influence that has driven the majority of your bigger decisions. What are the, you know, it's a life lesson that has a professional outcome as well. I hope that helps it a little bit. You'll also have my contact information. Join me on LinkedIn. Send me a note if you need help and like I'm struggling with this story. Does this make sense? Feel free to drop me a message.
I see a hand raised. If you'd like to come off mute and ask your question.
Oh, there we go.
Hello. Please, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much for pouring this out for us. So my question is on the position that you have to list on your LinkedIn profile. So for me, for example, I have done a couple of positions before joining my current employer. And after joining my current employer, which has spent over 10 years, so I've moved positions like up to 4 times. So how do I list this on LinkedIn? What's the best way to represent my knowledge or my job transition?
Sure. The best answer for this is that think about it as a title or a headline. Headlines are not old news, right? You don't want your headline to be old news. So in that sense, focus on the current or titles that best represent who you are now and where you want to go. You don't need to put in every single title that you've owned. That'll be down below in the experience. But if you consider it like a headline, don't put in old news, put in current news or future news. Does that make sense? I think so. Yes.
A lot of sense. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
I might be breaking because I'm actually driving. I'm in transit on the web back, so I'm driving. So
yes, please drive safely.
Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful session. I'm happy I didn't miss it.
Yeah, great. We're glad you're here. Nancy, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Tucker. You are awesome. I love a good hour where there's lots of chat and lots of great insights. My question is, for someone who works across all sectors, healthcare, education, tech, engineering, business, government. Is there any tips that you would give me to be able to, be both concise and thorough in my headline or my story? The work is the same, but I'm lucky to work with a broad spectrum of people and industries.
Yeah, so that, I think you almost answered your own question. That it's really about what you do to serve and create impact across all of those industries. That's the most important. The different industries that you work in belong in the about section underneath. You use that title in the headline to focus on the current way in which you create impact and how you're servicing those verticals. But the breadth of verticals and the breadth of experience in those belongs in the about section.
The about, I got to redo that. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Because otherwise you're trying to be, again, it's a search engine thing, right? So, if you try to be, here's another thing. If you try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to no one. People see right through.
Amen.
So be concise, be specific, make sure that you don't have, CMO and CFO in the same headline because no one's going to believe it, right? Make sure that headline is really a representation of current news and where you want to go.
It is a great cognitive and creative challenge to be both concise and thorough in the headline and the about and stuff like that. Like
it's never a one and done. I mean, I think I update and make changes weekly. So it's at least a good starting point for you.
So good to see you. Thank you, thank you, thank
you.
you.
We had a few questions that kind of overlap. We had some people asking if you might not have relevant work experience for the position that you want to transition to, or you might just be newer to the industry and just have less work experience in general. How do you make sure that you have a full profile still and that people can gain insight from your profile?
Perfect. Just worked with someone on this last week. There's two things to look at. One, that's where that about section, the storytelling, is more critical than ever. You have the ability to talk about who you are as an individual, what lights you up, what inspires you, that's directly related to where you want to go. The second thing is, even though, let's say, the company might be completely different, the vertical might be different industry, try and find lessons or things that you did within that organization that translate into key strengths you might have for the new company. Sometimes there's an interesting dynamic and connection between the two. Sometimes there is a complete, there is no connection. That's fine. People see people in transition all the time. I would just try and look at the way those 3 to 5 bullet points under that work experience, try to make the outcomes as relevant as they would be to outcomes for the new position, the new industry, that sort of thing. So again, it's use that about section for the storytelling, which creates more purpose, passion-driven messaging, and then use the work experience to deliver the outcomes that are relevant or support that. That would be my answer. Hopefully that answered it. If not, message me.
And on the opposite spectrum, we had a few people that say they have ample experience, and like you mentioned, people that might have been at a company for a long time. Should they break down the different roles they've had, or should they just try to limit the company to 3 to 5 bullets for that company? How do they express everything that went into that, like a decade or more at a company?
Thank you for bringing that up. Here's what I would suggest that you do. Companies do like to see internal promotion and advancement progress. So rather than stating it let's just pick Amazon. Rather than saying Amazon 3 different times and 3 different positions, it's Amazon with your current role. And then in the about section, you have plenty of characters to work with. Show the progress, oldest or newest down to oldest. Show people 3 bullet points or less how you advanced within the company over a 10 to 15 year period. So it's one company with multiple promotions. People see that because 1, it shows loyalty. 2, it shows your work ethic. And 3, it shows that you're coachable, workable, and you're eager to learn. So that is actually a good thing to show, but just don't do it as, some people put Amazon, I did this, Amazon, it gets really confusing. Just do it under one company.
Great, thank you. I'm hoping that was helpful for me. I won't speak for everyone else here, but I'm getting a lot from this.
Good.
On the topic of how we're branding ourselves, so we're talked a little bit about kind of how we flesh out our work experience or just the experience that we're bringing in general. How do you recommend branding our profile? Like, how do we create the banner? What do we choose for that? Do you have any tips about where to start if you're just getting started with that?
Yeah, there's, I mean, a couple things to look at. One is, I mean, I think the leading platform for anything like this is Canva. And I think, you know, even me, who's not an artist, can figure out a way to use it, right? So Canva, if you go into Canva and you search LinkedIn banner, it's got all the dimensions, everything that you need. It's just a matter of playing with an image and some content or however you want it to look. The other thing to do, if you can find what you want it to look like, and again, use it as a headline if you can, or something that's representative of you. If you have the message, you have the idea of what you want, go onto Fiverr. You could spend $20 or $25, $50 at the most for someone to design something that's going to last a long time. Fiverr is a great way. If you're not familiar with it, it's Fiverr with an extra R in the end. It's a great way to crowdsource quick things. Most likely, you either have a teenager around or somebody that knows Canva well that's willing to do it because they're kind of fun. As long as you have a direction and an idea of where you want to go, I would use Canva.
Perfect. Thank you. That is very helpful. And as people are kind of trying to spruce up their profiles and catch people's eyes who are looking through LinkedIn, is there any red flags or common mistakes that you see people making when they're trying to kind of grow their platform?
Number one mistake, I think, is, and I said it once before, if it's all about me, right? That resume used to be all about me. It's so easy to look at someone and say, this is all about me. If you can find a way to go, it's not about me, it's about we, and start thinking about that in your head. Even the language, pronouns, I. Don't use the I over and over again. We is always a good one, or start with a verb. You know, I didn't do this, but you can start with, verbs are really good to start bullet points. They're action focused. Rather than said, I did this, you can say learned, developed, created, designed, implemented. Use things like that, because the moment you see too many of the I and me, that's like, okay, this person's way too into themselves. So again, part of it is that approach. The second thing is, don't over explain, and don't, again, there's that overcompensator effect, where if you have too many bullet points, most people say that's just too much. Find the top 5 things that you feel you did the best, or that meant the most. Not just because you did them. Here's another thing I've learned too, is that people will put everything that they did. And when a recruiter sees that, they may latch on to the bottom 3 things that you did that you hate. And they may look and do an interview based off of the 3 things that you hate. Don't do that. Make sure that this is a good lesson. Put the bullet points of work experience are the things that you enjoyed, that you learned, that were successes, not the ones that you don't like.
Great answer. Thank you so much for that insight. Victoria, real quick, Fiverr is an online website where artists and people with different skills, they can sell their services. It starts typically at $5. That's where the name Fiverr comes from. And there's a lot of people, like Tucker said, who make Canva banners and can help people kind of brand themselves or do things like that. But off of kind of what you were talking about, Tucker, we had a question earlier when you were saying use we language and use verbs. Someone was talking about that they've been laid off and they feel they don't know what to do because there isn't a we anymore. How do you navigate a space like that when you're trying to find a new job, but also still represent the relationships that you had at your previous role?
I don't think, and part of this is going to be imposter syndrome. This is where we get the psychology of all of this coming into it, and there's nothing wrong with it. Part of that is imposter saying, okay, well, if I use a past tense verb, they're going to know that I got laid off or that I'm no longer there or whatever it is. People they're not going to create that. Here's the other thing. If they think that, not the right company for you anyway. Be accurate, be honest, be transparent. If you're not currently there, don't use present tense verbs. If you were there, use the past. Use it even though you might have gotten laid off, we don't care why, how, whatever it is, it's still an accomplishment that you were there. It's still part of who you are as an individual. It's still part of your professional pedigree. Own it, honor it, but don't hide from it. And again, like I said, the whole concept of gap really doesn't make sense. You know, it's just not there anymore. There's nothing wrong with saying, listen, I've had an incredible experience. I know exactly what I don't want to do, and I know exactly what I do want to do, and that's what I'm looking for. Be very honest and candid. That's where people really, you know, will grow to love you, is that you're honest. If you're skirting the situation or trying to hide something, it's evident. Hopefully that answers that question.
I think you've given us a lot of insight today. The chat seems to agree. A lot of people have been saying thank you. As we're getting close to time, technically overtime, do you have any final words or recommendations for people?
Sure. I mean, I think you can see for me that there's so much passion in developing your voice through this. The way in which we used LinkedIn a few years ago is not the way we use it now. I do believe it's your single greatest source. And I don't work for LinkedIn. It sounds like I'm selling it. It's just a really great place for people to network. It's a great way for people to find volunteer opportunities, educational opportunities, professional opportunities. And quite frankly, I get people all the time saying, hey, I really like your story. Can we connect? It's just a great way. It's great dialogue. And here's the other thing is you can be selective. If it doesn't fit, don't accept it. Surround yourself with like-minded people that are going to raise you up. If it's not the right fit, it's okay to say no. It's not a race to how many followers you have. It's not a race. This is about the quantity of leaders that you connect yourself with, not followers. So don't try and build your profile based off of followers. And quite honestly, people don't look at it and say, oh my gosh, they don't have enough followers, I'm not going to touch them. It's not what this is about. Be honest, find a voice, be creative. Remember that humans buy on emotion and justify with logic. Don't treat your LinkedIn profile like a logical platform. Treat it with creativity, with honor, with fun, with emotion. I think you're going to start to see a lot more dialogue, icebreakers in conversation, authentic conversation that come from it versus ones where you feel like you have to force it. And with that, I hope this was helpful. I look forward to seeing more of you on LinkedIn. If you need any help, message me. And have a wonderful holiday season, and I will see you all soon.